Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Kristen McPhee. I'm a nutritionist and clinical herbalist here in Marquette, Michigan. And this is a workshop focusing on 6 essential herbs and supplements for optimum health. So here are the 6. I've got 2 herbs and 4 supplements that I think are crucial to know about. I would really like to expand this topic into a top 10 list, so the ones on the right are ones that I would consider in my top 10 for future reference. So the first one we're going to discuss is garlic. Garlic was actually used 3,500 years ago in Egypt for the treatment of cancer, and it still continues to have anti-cancer properties today. And the most medicinal component of garlic is due to its organosulfur compounds, and that occurs when you crush a garlic clove and an enzyme will release the active constituent. It's called allicin. So that's good to know about. And I use garlic clinically mostly as an antimicrobial. I've used high doses of the concentrated extract for chronic Lyme disease, but it's got a number of benefits. The antimicrobial properties can also help support candida, yeast infections, parasites, fungus, and even dental caries and periodontitis if you were using it as part of a mouthwash regimen. And it's antioxidant, meaning that it helps lower oxidative stress. It's antiplatelet and antihypertensive, meaning that it has a lot of benefits to prevent cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure. As I mentioned, anti-cancer, and possibly anti-hyperglycemic, meaning that it may help improve glucose tolerance and insulin secretion if you're diabetic or at risk of diabetes. And here are some of the indications that relate to the actions mentioned on the previous slide. So the first one is, high cholesterol, atherosclerosis, any sort of upper respiratory infection, sinusitis. It's great for that. Reduces the heavy metal burden because it helps to clear the liver of any toxins. It's hepatoprotective, meaning that it helps optimize liver function. Candida and modifying the bowel flora, helping with any intestinal parasites. And then you look at the shape of a garlic, and depending on, if you hold it upside down, it looks a little bit like the shape of a heart. So you can remember garlic being good for the cardiovascular system. There aren't a lot of contraindications other than if you have an allergy to garlic, and also it does have a blood thinning effect, so that can increase the effect of any anticoagulant or antiplatelet drugs. So you want to be cautious if you're doing high dose garlic with those. And then there's also a contraindication with one HIV and AIDS drug. Here's some reputable garlic brands. The Alamax I've used, as I mentioned, with chronic Lyme, doing high dosages of that. A maintenance dose, like a therapeutic maintenance dose, would be one tiny capsule of the Alamax listed in the center. The 450 milligrams is really high. I wouldn't do that unless you're supervised with a practitioner. And then the Mediurt product is a good quality, but you have to work with a practitioner to have access to it. If you want to work with garlic as more of a food as medicine approach and make it more economical, there's all sorts of creative things that you can do. If you go to a health food store, you might see something called fire cider on the shelf. Fire cider is a mix of ginger, horseradish, onion, garlic, jalapeno, lemon, rosemary, turmeric, cayenne, with apple cider vinegar and possibly honey. That's a 16-ounce bottle. I believe an 8-ounce bottle costs $25, but you'd have to check on that for me to know. But either way, it's kind of expensive considering what the ingredients are. And you can make that very simply at home. And the picture in the middle is a homemade batch of fire cider. So you could make that. It will store in your pantry for a very long time. And you just take a spoonful of it a day, or you integrate it into your cooking. And that will boost your immune system and give you a lot of the benefits of garlic, as well as the other um, items in the ingredients. Another way to get garlic into your body for more of a therapeutic dose is to crush it or mince it and take it with honey or peanut butter or an olive oil, or you could even do a flaxseed oil. And it still doesn't taste great, but it's really not recommended to take minced garlic on its own, because it will affect your esophagus and it can be very irritating and uncomfortable. So you need to take it with something like that. You can actually store it crushed in honey. And then the upper picture is a garlic aioli sauce. So you could make, it's more of a garlic based mayonnaise spread. So you can do something like that, or you can actually make a garlic fluff, which would be an oil and garlic pureed, and it makes something sort of like a hummus dip, but with garlic. So those are all really great. If you want a therapeutic dose, I would recommend the fire cider, or mincing the garlic and then taking it directly after while that organosulfur compound is most active. So here are the actions of turmeric. Turmeric I have used clinically in clients who have inflammatory states, generally people who are older in age, who have arthritis, joint pain, and also need some support for neurological health and memory. And then I use it as a blend with other herbs too to help heal leaky gut. So you can do it as a powder with other herbs for leaky gut, irritable bowel disease, and Crohn's. The active constituent for turmeric are the curcuminoids, and that's what gives the plant its yellow color and pharmacological actions. It is anti-inflammatory, so it's great for a lot of conditions related to joint pain and arthritis. It is antiplatelet, meaning that it can help inhibit platelet aggregation, even lower triglycerides and cholesterol. It's also antioxidant, so it helps fight free radical scavengers and reduce the oxidative stress on the body. And it's hypolipidemic, meaning that it can what it does is it increases the conversion of cholesterol to bile salts, so that the cholesterol can then be excreted out the body through the bile. And it's choleretic, which ties into the hypolipidemic, but it helps stimulate gallbladder production, so bile production, which is another reason why it helps with digestion. Here's some of the indications. As I mentioned, a lot of arthritic conditions. It's great to help with detoxification and optimizing liver function. Cancer prevention, it's great for Alzheimer's prevention. High cholesterol, cardiovascular disease. And it's a very common culinary herb, so there's not a lot of contraindications. The one caution is that be careful about taking high dosages with antiplatelet and anticoagulant drugs, similar to garlic, because it does have the ability to thin the blood and increase its efficacy of those pharmaceuticals. So here's some reputable products that are of turmeric supplements. The one on the left is kind of interesting. I haven't seen a lot of those developed yet, but it's fish oil with curcumin in it. So both of those are great for cognitive health, increasing glutathione production, which means to support the liver function, as well as address the oxidative stress on the body. They're both very potent anti-inflammatories, so I kind of thought that was interesting to see together. Gaia does a great extract of turmeric in their phytocaps. It's a good quality, a little pricey. Then they also do a powder that it's blended with other herbs, and you can add it to warm milk and drink that. It tastes sort of like a chai, and it's traditionally known as a golden milk, so you can buy something like that, and that's pretty good, pretty yummy. You can also do a lot on your own. I am drinking a turmeric tea right now, hot tea. I like to do golden milk, so if you look online, you can find a golden milk recipe, like the one pictured. And then just having curries is a really great way to add in turmeric to your diet. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about are probiotics. So we're getting into the 4 supplements that I've mentioned. Probiotics are, we don't eat fermented food anymore. We rarely eat fermented food anymore. So we often need other ways to support our gut flora, and our gut is sort of the core of a lot of our health woes. If we have a healthy gut, our immune systems are stronger. There's a lot of research on the brain-gut axis and the health benefits of that. So someone who has skin conditions such as acne or has an overactive histamine response that is expressed in the form of asthma or chronic sinusitis or allergies, food allergy sensitivities, those are signs that they would need gut health. Someone who's been on a lot of antibiotics, having more of a standard American diet that would be low in fiber and high in carbs and sugar. If you're lower in hydrochloric acid to digest meats properly, if you consume a lot of dairy but lack lactase to digest it, things like that. If you have just digestive distress, that's usually your body telling you something's not right in your gut. Some mood disorders, as I mentioned, with the brain-gut interaction. And then if you're prone to get cavities and you don't really know why, that often can be related to poor gut health. And in Chinese medicine, they'll do a tongue assessment. I do this in clinical practice as well, but usually if a person shows you their tongue and the back base of the tongue has a strong, thick white coat, that means that they need some gut support. And that's because the back of the tongue there is correlated to the intestines. Okay? So you can do that on your own too, is do a tongue assessment at home in the mirror. I found these reputable probiotic brands. The listing is from a website called labdoor.com. It's free to the public, and they do rankings of 29 supplements based on label accuracy, product purity, nutritional value, ingredient safety, and projected efficacy. So I just listed the top 7 that are on their website, and just know that those are of good quality. And then I pictured a few others to highlight. The ones on the right are more of a high potency strain type product. So the Innate has 200 CFUs, and it's a 7-day intensive. The other one, I can't quite read, but I think it has 450 CFUs. And you can find that one at a Walgreens or CVS and even Walmart. It's clearly very expensive, listed as $100. And then the Innate's about $32. But if you haven't taken probiotics for a long time and you have some signs and symptoms indicating that you would benefit, it's great to start with an intensive like that, like a high potency one. And then for maintenance, you want to go down to maybe 20 CFUs. The one on the left called Gut Pro, that's the only brand that I know of that actually helps lower histamine response. So if you have a child who suffers with overactive histamine, like can't consume high histamine foods and has to be on a special diet, or adults have this too, that is a really good product to know. It's the only one I know of that actually lessens the histamine response in the body. It's very expensive, but very good. Okay, so these are, now I'm going to talk about omega-3s, and this listing here I got from a website called Natural Standard. It's now Natural Medicines, but it's only available to practitioners. You have to pay for a subscription to have access, but what they do is they compile all the clinical evidence on herbs and supplements and they assess them, and one of the ways they do that is by ratings. So omega-3s were given a grade A, the highest grade, for addressing those 5 conditions. So that's what omega-3s are most effective for based on clinical studies. Okay. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a background on the importance of fats. Our primal ancestors had consumed a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-6 and omega-3s. Our modern diet is about a 15-to-1 ratio. So we've moved quite far away from our ancestors in that regard. We need both, however. Both are essential fatty acids, meaning that we need to get them from our diet. And they both help to form the myelin sheath of our nervous system, and they both help to with the structure and function of our cells. So they make up the phospholipid membrane. So to have healthy cells, we absolutely need healthy fats. So the low fat craze that has happened, particularly marketing to women, I'm not a believer in. We need fats for healthy cellular function and our nervous systems and our brains and our hormones to be in balance. Omega-6s are a little bit, I wouldn't say controversial, but it's good to know that they have both an inflammatory and anti-inflammatory effect on the body. So if you are consuming them in excess, it's possible that you may have more an imbalance of inflammatory states going on. And that's because they break down into arachidonic acid, which has a number of important functions in our body, but being an acid, it can be inflammatory. And omega-3s are in the forms of, vegan and vegetarian forms are flax seeds and walnuts, things of that nature. They're much higher up on the chain in alpha-linoleic acid form. And then as you go down, you've probably heard of EPA and DHA forms, and those are related more to our fish oil supplements. So they're all good for us. I would certainly promote integrating some of the alpha-linoleic forms into our diet. The problem is that our bodies can't as efficiently utilize those forms because it has to go through a series of additional steps to make it bioavailable, whereas EPA only has a couple steps and DHA is readily available. So I think that's all I wanted to say there. The only other thing, I guess, is that evening primrose oil and borage, those are more of an omega-6 supplement, usually used for female hormonal support, and those are they're the only omega-6 that are anti-inflammatory that I know of. No inflammatory actions. So here's a few different products of different fish oil supplements. The one on the left is just a standard good quality fish oil. It's flavored, so you can take it by the spoonful and it shouldn't taste too bad. In fact, if it's fresh, it really shouldn't have a fishy taste at all, even if it's not flavored. And then sometimes you'll see on the market more cod and krill oil supplements coming out. And the difference between cod and krill versus a more standard fish oil is that they tend to have a higher DHA content, And the higher DHA supplements help a little bit more with neurological health and visual health. And they're also calming, so they're specifically useful for bipolar individuals who are in a manic state. It can help calm them down. The ones that are higher in EPA tend to help more with other mood disorders. Okay, so now we're moving on to vitamin D, and this is a very unattractive looking chart to try to understand, but I'll try to explain it as best I can. Vitamin D, the name is a little bit of a misnomer because it's actually a hormone that regulates cell differentiation and growth, as well as calcium homeostasis. So it helps with a lot of our cellular health, but also bone health. And the percentages here are they're all based on this 25 baseline. So if you look at, there's a bold vertical line at 25. And for example, if you look at the breast cancer percentage, it reduces by 30% when your levels of DHA or vitamin D, I'm sorry, go up to 34 versus where they would be at the baseline. So there's a 30% less risk of developing breast cancer when your vitamin D levels have gone up closer to the middle of where they should be. And if they go up all the way to the higher end near 50, they approach an 83% reduced risk. So that obviously varies based on condition, but you can see how important it is in that if you're able to keep your vitamin D levels in the upper range, you're reducing your risk of a number of different conditions. And here's some reputable vitamin D brands. Again, just pulled it from labdoor.com. And the one on the right is just a reminder that if you're going to invest in a vitamin D supplement, it's nice to find one that also has some amount of K, and that's because there's a synergy with the two where the vitamin K can help direct the calcium to the bones. So this is important particularly if you are postmenopausal and are taking a supplement because you need help with strong bones. Magnesium can also help increase the absorption, so if you can find a supplement, vitamin D with K and magnesium, you'd be pretty well set. And vitamin K is in a lot of our dark green leafy vegetables, which is why there's kale in the background. So dosing varies because the amount of sunlight we're exposed to varies, and we actually get about 80 to 90% of our vitamin D through the sun. So in an ideal world, you would be able to expose your bare skin, like this guy here, before 10 or after 2 for about 20 to 30 minutes, and that would be sufficient for your vitamin D. It's actually more efficient to go out and expose your skin for a shorter duration than to lay out and sunbathe. But it's good to know where you are with your levels before you begin supplementing. So you want to get retested by your physician every 4 to 6 months, and that can help determine your dosing. But above is some general guidelines on what a correct dose would be based on where your levels are. And you do need to be careful about overdosing because you can develop deficiencies in other areas if your vitamin D levels are way out of range. Okay, so I saved this one for last because multivitamins are a little bit of a controversial topic. There's been some research out there on people who have taken multivitamins actually have increased rates of mortality, which is not what we want to hear. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit, and I think part of the confusion lies in clumping all multivitamin, multiminerals together as one, and they're not all created equal. As you can see, the ingredients of a whole food supplement versus something like Centrum Silver are very different from each other. Um, Centrum Silver is the #1 seller on the market for a multivitamin, and it has a lot of additives. So some of those are highlighted, but I think there's others that aren't highlighted as well, like um, coloring, and they have more of the synthetic forms of supplements like the cyanocobalamin and folic acid. Those are harder for some of us to metabolize properly. Vitamin A acetate is not an ideal form for vitamin A. And then some are toxic. So copper sulfate is actually, I believe, is actually toxic to the body. Some of these ingredients are related to ingredients that you would find in paint. So you need to be careful about what you're ingesting in your body, and learn how to read ingredient labels on supplements similarly to how you read um, the labels on our food products. So this is just a cheat sheet reference guide on what labels are the ideal, what you want to look for in the labels. So for B12, for example, cyanocobalamin is a synthetic form. Um, let's see, that requires conversion to other cobalamins to become active. So not everybody's bodies knows how to do that. So you're better off to get one that's a methylcobalamin form. Di-alpha tocopherol has been known to increase mortality, disease, and prostate cancer. So if you have a multivitamin with vitamin E, you want to look for one that is a mix of different vitamin E sources. Magnesium citrate is okay, but it can disrupt someone's bowels, so it's not for everyone. The ideal is the one recommended under best. I'm going to skip over iron. Calcium carbonate is okay, but you have to take your supplement with a meal. Otherwise, you're not able to utilize that form. So it's best to look for the other forms. And folic acid is synthetic, so not all of our bodies know how to utilize that. So you want to look for ideally methylfolate. The other thing to remember is if you consume products in your diet that have what do I want to say? Oh, fortified foods. So if you're eating foods that are fortified, one of the risks of taking a multivitamin and mineral, especially when they're in the synthetic form, is that you could be overdosing certain supplements. So you might be getting too much zinc, folic acid, iron, copper, or vitamin E. So you have to be careful with that. I think it's best practice to get a food-based supplement just to reduce that risk and to get as much of the benefit from a supplement as you can. So here's some reputable brands, again, ranked by Labdoor. The one on the left is kind of nice, left corner, because they're tiny tabs, but they're still an adult form of a vitamin multi. Just because some multis are like horse pills and people have a hard time swallowing those. And then Innate has a multi powder, which is sort of nice. Like if you're in the habit of already juicing or making smoothies, and you like things more as a food form, that's pretty nice, and I've heard that it tastes really good, so that's something to consider. And this is more of an herbalist perspective, but you can make your own multivitamin and minerals just by blending a bunch of kind of nutrient dense foods and herbs into a powder form and taking a spoonful of that however you want to take it. So there's 2 recipes listed. It's not an exact science, and I think it's partially what you're drawn to, what kind of taste you want to create, and also what what nutrients you want to emphasize based on your individual constitution and needs. Um, the second recipe has actually been used by a practitioner friend of mine, and she would use it as a recipe to add to your homemade popcorn, like air popped popcorn. And there's a number of benefits to all those. I'm not going to go into all of them, but nutritional yeast is rich in B vitamins and B12, particularly good for vegans. Kelp is very mineral rich and a great source of iodine. Sesame is high in calcium, magnesium, and zinc. Milk thistle helps with optimizing liver function and detoxification, in addition to a number of other benefits. Garlic adds flavor if you're having it as part of a snack, like in popcorn. And we talked about all the benefits of garlic already. Nettle is like a super spinach almost. It's high in vitamin K and minerals, protein, and silica. And then Linus Pauling Institute is another great website to know about. It's all very research based and free to the public. They have a 4-page handout that guides people through all of this on, correct dosing and what to look for in a multivitamin and mineral, and what are the food forms of those different nutrients as well. And this is the home stretch, so I just wanted to touch on a couple other things in regards to integrating supplements and herbs into your lifestyle on your own. So, so you want to consider when you're taking a supplement or an herb that all individuals are not created equal. And so dosing on a bottle is generally recommended for a 150-pound person on average. So you want to consider what an individual's weight is. So if they're very heavy set or smaller, that might determine dosing. Also consider size. So a 6'3" person and a 5'1" person who have the same body weight would not necessarily take the same dose, and that's because the organs of a larger statured person are going to be larger. Also consider age, particularly when the person is elderly or a child, and whether or not a person is pregnant or breastfeeding, and then just individual sensitivity. And usually you know if you're a sensitive person or not, but sensitive people respond much more rapidly to certain herbs and supplements than a resistant person who needs a larger dose to feel any effect at all. So those all can affect dosing as well. I often help my clients through the herb nutrient interactions. So you need to take into account what time of day is best to take an herb or supplement. Should it be taken with food or on an empty stomach? And are there any contraindications to taking certain things together? So this would be a handout that I would give to a client at a follow-up with all the instructions laid out for them. Also make sure you're getting your supplements and herbs from quality sources. I have access to an online dispensary, a couple of them. One of them is NP Script, where I'm able to offer pretty significant discounts to my clients, and they can order all their herbs and supplements through this dispensary and have them delivered straight to their door. Because I'm an alumni of Maryland University of Integrative Health, I also have access to their herbal dispensary, and there's only a couple of them in the country that I know of. And I can custom formulate herbal blends, call in an order to that dispensary, and they'll blend the herbs and ship it directly to my clients. And I can modify those formulas over time, and the products that they're using are usually herbal products only available to practitioners. So they tend to be a much more concentrated blend, particularly with tinctures. There's also sometimes I'll do teas and powders as well. And I do like to direct people to local businesses as well. I just have to factor in what's available and the cost effectiveness to the client. So I just gave you all these nuggets of new information that you can consider and start to apply into your own health and wellness. And I do believe in empowering people to take care of their own health and wellness long term. So, what does that mean for my role as a practitioner? How can I help people in addition? And what I think might be helpful is if I just kind of explain what my scope of practice is and generally what the flow is when I'm working with the client. So we would meet for an initial consultation and we would discuss their comprehensive intake form that they had completed ahead of time. And they've often done at least a 3-day food diary for me too, so I have a good grasp on what their diet is like. They bring with me any current lab work and supplements and tell me about what their primary concerns are, what brought them here, what they'd like to work on. So we develop short and long-term goals based on all that information. I've also likely done a tongue diagnosis, an energetic assessment, looked at any potential interactions between herbs and nutrients and drugs, and maybe I've even done like a nutritionist physical exam. So I get all that information together and I will outline a short-term and long-term plan for them. And generally, the first step is that I want to get their foundation squared away. So we look at any deficiencies in the diet and lifestyle that would be pulling them more towards a state of disease than towards health. And we get that into alignment, working as a team, and help restore balance and cellular healing. At their next follow-up, I'd offer interventions of supplements and herbs, only as needed though, and that would be to help any underlying imbalances or deficiencies that can't be corrected just through diet and lifestyle alone. And then that's modified as we progress over time and based a lot on the influence of the client's personal motivation and compliance. And I generally say that for acute conditions, I would anticipate committing to 3 consults spaced 4 to 6 weeks apart, and for more chronic conditions or weight loss, I would anticipate 6 consults spaced 4 to 6 weeks apart. So please feel free to reach out to me if there's any questions I can answer for you. You can go to my website. It's www.kristenmcphee.com.